I want to say a special welcome to everybody who is here today, and thank you for your kind attention through a very long series. This is the, I believe, 8th or 9th message that I've preached in this series, and that's 2 months. That's a long time. It's actually been a little longer because of some delays or some special speakers. I was out of town for a week of vacation, and so thank you for your kind attention as we have looked at the truths of God's Word, and I've tried to systematize and put them into something where it's gathered and understandable. Here's where we've been. We've talked about the doctrine of revelation, that God speaks. He speaks through His Word. He speaks through Jesus. He speaks through creation and through His Holy Spirit, and He reveals Himself to us. Religion, Christianity, let me scratch that. Try again. Religion is the story of man searching for God, but Christianity is the story of God revealing Himself to man. And that is just a powerful truth. And so we studied, what does God say about Himself? He is holy. He is loving. He is eternal. He is the Creator. And we studied those truths. And then we talked about this holy God created. He made man in His image and His likeness. What does the Bible say about us? Well, we're created in God's image. We are stamped with His image. And so we're made to last forever. We're made with mind, will, and emotions as God is. We are a living soul that will last forever somewhere. Then we talked about sin, the problem in the world. Mankind has sinned, and every person since our first parents, Adam and Eve, has been bound by sin. We have been infected by the virus of sin, and we will inevitably, when we grow up, we will inevitably fall into actions of sin. It will happen because we are sinful by nature. But then we talked about the good news of the Bible, that God has sent His Son Jesus, who, remaining who He was, God, became what He was not, the God-man, and died on a cross, lived without sin, died on a cross, the death you and I should have died, paying the price we could not pay. Then He conquered death and hell and sin and rose again on the third day, and He is returning someday, which we'll talk about today. And He has provided a way for salvation, which was the next message that we preached, where we talked about the salvation is God fixing what sin broke. Everything that sin broke, God is repairing. Not only the actions and the guilt of your past and those things, but He's also repairing the damage to your soul and your heart. He's sanctifying us into the likeness of Jesus. And in that process, we are more and more and more like Christ. We grow in holiness. And then someday, and gradually, God is picking up the broken pieces of our life, and He's putting them back together again so they become beautiful instead of broken. And then we talked last week about the church, God's family, God's people. And that we are, the church is not a building, it's not a place that we go, it is you and it is me. And we are God's family, God's people, bought by His blood. And we are a kingdom extension vehicle. We are a kingdom extension organization. God is the king, He rules, but He has given us the responsibility, He has given us the job to spread that news to all of the world, that there is a God who lovingly, passionately pursues every human being on this planet and is chasing after you. He's pursuing after you and every person that you have ever met, and He wants to save you and every person that you've ever met. And someday, He's coming back, and that's what we're talking about today, all right? We're going to talk today about heaven and hell and the end of the world and all of that. Now, I'm not going to solve every problem and answer every question. Whenever I start talking about the end of the world, everybody wants to know, when is it? And the problem is that I don't know, and neither does any person on the face of the earth. And if you hear somebody say the end of the world will be on this day, you should disregard them. okay? Because Jesus said, no man knows the day or the hour. In fact, he said, even the Son doesn't know. God says, I will tell you, Son, when it's time. And Jesus says, that's fine. I'm one of my people. He has become one of us. And as a man, no man knows the day or the hour. And so Jesus will come when the Father says, it's time. I've put all the pieces in place. And so the truth is, we don't know. We don't know when the end of the world will be. However, we live as if it could be today, right? You want to live ready. You don't want to live in sin and playing around the edge. You don't want to live with one foot in and one foot out. You want to be both feet in God's kingdom, right? You want to be on the stretch, chasing after God, following Jesus. And one of these days, we'll look up and realize we've followed Jesus right through the gates of heaven. And that's the day I'm looking forward to. C.S. Lewis said, the great author that wrote the Chronicles of Narnia and many other famous Christian books, C.S. Lewis said, if you read history, you will find that the Christians who did most for this world were the ones who thought the most of the next world. In other words, if you think much of heaven, if you have a high view of heaven, you'll be likely to do much for this world as well. I think we ought to have a high view, an excited view of heaven. I grew up not all that excited about heaven. Now, that wasn't my mom and dad's fault, okay? It wasn't their fault. I grew up in a preacher's home. It's just that I felt like I had a lot of living to do yet. I wanted to grow up and drive a car and get married and have kids. I wanted to do that stuff, and I love life, and I wanted to do those things. I wasn't all that comparatively excited about heaven. But as I've grown up, I've realized was that the reason was I had a misunderstanding of what heaven was. I had a misunderstanding of what it was like. I grew up hearing a lot of people say, oh, we can't imagine how good heaven will be. And I want to tell you, yes, you can. Yes, you can. In fact, that scripture, God, no eye has not seen, and ear has not heard, nor has even entered into the mind of man the things that God has prepared for them that love him. That has often been quoted about heaven. Now, it may have some application to heaven, but it's not talking about heaven. It's talking about salvation. He's quoting from the Old Testament, and he's talking about how great our salvation is. It's so amazing that people in the Old Testament, those people didn't even really understand how big and how awesome it really was. In fact, the next verse after that one, Paul says, but God has revealed them to us through his Spirit. So we can't imagine how wonderful our salvation is, but now God has showed us how wonderful it really is. And we can imagine how great God's salvation for us is. That verse isn't talking about heaven. In fact, the Bible has a lot to say about the end. But sometimes we don't think much about it. We get so busy in today's world, so busy in an age of space shuttles, microwaves, jobs, and TV programs and internet and smartphones that we just forget about heaven. How many of you would say in the past week, I'm not sure that I've thought that much about heaven? How many would be honest and say, I'm not sure I've thought that much about heaven in the past week? All right. Yeah. See what I mean? Now, I'm not mad at you or yelling at you today, but I'm just saying, we go through our lives and we don't think about it. It's not like it's right there all the time. In fact, I want to tell you a story this morning. In 1952, there was a swimmer named Florence Chadwick. Florence Chadwick was a female swimmer, and she was a distance swimmer. In fact, she's one of the legends of swimming. In 1952, she attempted something that she had never done before. She attempted to swim the 26 miles between Catalina Island and the coastline of California. So she started on Catalina Island, started swimming for the mainland of California. As she began, she was flanked by some small boats that traveled with her and were prepared to help her if she got tired or if there was some problem. And physically with her, they also were there to keep sharks away. And she swam through 26 miles of open ocean. She swam, and she swam, and she kept swimming, and she kept swimming. Now, if you've ever swam for any distance at all, you know that swimming is a lot of work. It is a tremendous amount of exercise. And she swam and swam for 15 hours. After she had swam for 15 hours, in moved a thick fog off the coastline of California. That thick fog made it impossible to see far ahead. You couldn't see very far at all. And she kept swimming and kept swimming. She swam for another hour after the 15-hour mark when the fog had moved in. Finally, she said, "I am exhausted. I can't make it. Pull me out of the water." They pulled her out of the water, and as she sat in the boat, they discovered that she had stopped swimming 1 mile from the California coastline. She said, quote, "I think if I could have seen the shore, I would have made it." I think if I could have seen the shore, I would have made it. I am here to tell you that as a believer, one of the most powerful motivations for continuing is a clear view of what is waiting for you in heaven. One of the most powerful motivations for keeping on going is to know what is waiting for you on the other side. After all, the Apostle Paul himself said, if it is only in this life that we have hope in Christ, we are of all men most miserable. Now, I know in America we don't believe that because we don't feel like we're that miserable, right? Sometimes we're like, oh, that life's pretty good, actually. And we are in America, but Paul was shipwrecked 5 times, beaten several times within an inch of his life, stoned on one occasion, was in prison or in jail for a number of years. Great deal of his life. He was often lied about and was often in danger of his life. And this is miserable, this is horrible, unless heaven is real. Unless there is something really on the other side of this life, unless there is a heaven to gain and a hell to avoid, then this life is pointless. Why would you bother being a Christian? Go do what you want to do if there's no heaven. But if there is, now Florence Chadwick tried again not that long later, a few months, 2 months later, she tried again, and this time the same fog moved in as she was working and swimming across that. But she said, I kept a mental image of the coastline in my mind. What is she saying? I couldn't see it with my physical eyes, but I saw it in my mind. I saw it in my heart, and I was able to keep going even when I couldn't see it with my eyes. Listen, friends, you can't see heaven with these physical eyes, but if you can keep a mental picture and keep it right there, you can keep going. You can keep going. Yes, life is tough sometimes. Yes, it's hard to be a believer. Sometimes it's difficult. But I want to tell you, if you see the next world clearly, you can make it. You can make it. Paul said it this way. If you're looking at your handout, he said this, therefore, we do not lose heart. We do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, and what is unseen is eternal. Yes. The problems you're having right now, if you are a believer, they are temporary. If you are not a believer, I'm afraid that they are permanent and they only get worse. But if you are a believer, they're just temporary. The light afflictions that are but for a moment. Now, there's a lot of difficult things about end times prophecy. And I will just kind of sketch for you real quickly. Some people believe that there's a 1,000-year period where Jesus will reign on the earth in a literal 1,000-year period, and he'll be the king here on the earth. Other people believe that 1,000-year period is figurative, and Jesus reigns through his church, that the church will conquer and will win, and we will, as Christ's representatives on the earth, we will rule the earth. And so that the church will win and the gospel will prevail. That's called amillennialism. Millennial means 1,000 years. Means no, and so amillennial is there's no 1,000 years. All right, the other idea is millennialism, and that idea is that Jesus will set up his rule on this earth for 1,000 years, and there's a 1,000-year period referenced in the book of Revelation. If you're a millennialist, you fall into two different camps. One camp is post-millennialism, and that is that that the church will conquer, the gospel will win, will save most of the earth, and Jesus will rule through the church for 1,000 years. Then there will be a big rebellion, and Jesus will come back at the end of the 1,000 years, will return physically to the earth, conquer the enemy, and set up his eternal kingdom of heaven. That's post-millennial, so after the millennium. Some people say they are premillennialists. They believe that Jesus will come back. The next thing on God's calendar is a rapture where Jesus will come back and we will suddenly be taken up to be with him. And then the Christians removed from this earth, there will be a 7-year period of tribulation where some people will be saved, many people will be saved, but it'll be difficult, and the Antichrist will come, and he'll rule the earth, and then he'll be conquered at the end of the 7-year tribulation. Okay, the truth is that this is really, really a difficult subject, and I'm not going to be able to answer all those questions. I'm just not going to be able to do it. In fact, I know people that personally that I know, love, and respect, who know the Scriptures really well and who are convinced that their position is right. I saw a cartoon one time that I want to share with you. I don't have it for the slideshow, but I want to describe it to you. There was a road coming up toward heaven. You could see heaven in the background. And there was a road coming up toward heaven, and there was a desk where you checked in. And then there was a whole bunch of paths that branched out like this, and there were a whole bunch of doors in the wall. And it said, it would say over this one, it would say amillennialism, and then it would say postmillennialism, and then it would say premillennial, pre-tribulation rapture, and then it said premillennial mid-tribulation rapture, and the next one said premillennial post-tribulation rapture. And then the roads all came back together again and went up to heaven on the other side of that wall. So you're going to go, and you go, no matter which door you go in, you're still going to heaven, all right? That's the good news. The truth is, Christians may disagree about exactly how it's going to happen and how the timing of all of that works, but I will tell you this, there are some things that we don't argue about as Christians. There are some things that we don't disagree on, and those are the ones I'm going to focus on this morning. All right? Are you ready? We're going to talk about what we do agree on and what holds us together as Christians. Number one, Jesus will return. Okay? Whether you believe it's before the tribulation or after the tribulation or in the middle of the tribulation or after the millennium, Jesus is going to come back. And that's really, really good news. Men of Galilee, the angel said, "Why do you stand here looking into the sky? This same Jesus who has been taken from you into heaven will come back in the same way you have seen him go into heaven." It's going to happen. Jesus is going to come back. Now, I have my beliefs on what those things are, and frankly, I've got one foot in one of them and one foot in the other one. That's where I'm at right now. I'm still studying, like, I don't know. I say, I want to live like the rapture could be today, right now. That's the way I want to live. And I respect that about premillennialism. I respect that they're urgent. Well, you need to get saved because you don't want to miss the rapture, right? You need to get saved because Jesus is coming back. On the other hand, I am an optimist, and I believe in the power of the gospel, and I believe in the power of the Holy Spirit through His church. I believe that the gospel can win and can conquer. What I don't like is I don't like Christians saying, oh, it's getting bad. And it's getting worse. And we just all need to have a holy huddle until Jesus comes back. And most likely, it's going to be difficult. But Jesus is going to take us out of here. And the gospel is a world evacuation plan. No, the gospel's not a world evacuation plan. It's a world transformation plan. God wants to save people and change lives. And you shouldn't just hunker down and wait for the horn to blow and Jesus to take you out of here. No, we should be out winning our neighbors to Jesus, preaching the good news, sharing it with everybody, doing good works, giving out food baskets, serving in the community. That's what we should be doing as the church. Jesus, after all, did say, occupy until I come, right? We got things to do, friends. There's a lot to do. Jesus will return. Number 2, heaven and hell are real places of physical existence. Real places of physical existence. Now, I want to read a couple of things. I want to, first of all, read John chapter 5, verses 28 and 29. Do not be amazed at this, Jesus said. For a time is coming when all those in their graves will hear His voice and come out. And those who have done good will rise to live. Those who have done evil will rise to be condemned. It is important that I tell you as a pastor that there is a real place called hell. And you don't want to go there. There's a scripture that says that God, if I make my bed in hell, behold, God is there. And how is that possible? Well, here's how. The presence of God's justice is in hell, but His love and mercy and hope is not there. In hell, a place of literal physical torment and existence, a place of eternal burning fire. That's the way the Bible describes it. A place of darkness. I heard somebody say, well, there can't really be a hell because fire gives off light, and the Bible says hell is dark. My friends, if you ever have been inside a house fire, if you've ever been inside a house fire and the smoke and the darkness and the confusion, it's not a place of light. No. Are there things that I don't completely understand about the way the Bible depicts hell? Yes, there are. But my friends, Jesus said it was a place, a real place of physical existence, and I don't want you to go there. And I have dedicated my life to telling you, you don't have to. But here's the thing. Look at Revelation chapter 22, verse 8, and also I've put a quote in from 14:11. But the cowardly and the unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and the sexually immoral and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. And the smoke of their torment rises up forever and ever. On your handout there, I just want to encourage you to see the smoke of their torment rises forever and ever. This is not something that ends or goes away. And you say, well, in that case, I'm afraid I have family who are there. And if that is so, understand this, that God is just. That God is just. And you don't have to go there. I've heard people say flippant things where they'll use phrases like, what the hell? And I will not allow my family, I will not say it, I will not allow my family to say it because I do not flippantly use the word hell. It is not a casual thing to joke about. It is not, my friends. It is horrible and horrific. You would not use words of the tragedy that happened in Orlando, the horrible, despicable murdering of those people. You wouldn't use that in a flippant way. It would be disrespectful to the horrific actions of that man and those who died. But hell, my friends, is far, far, far more serious and far worse, because millions of people will go there this year. People, tens of thousands of people will go there from Oklahoma City this year. And the reason we are urgent about this, the reason God put us here, is to proclaim to your neighbors and your friends and your family that there is no need to go to that place of torment. The only good thing I can say about hell is you don't have to go there. I know that there are Christians, people who call themselves Christians, even some who have written in recent days. Rob Bell, a pastor who wrote a book back a couple of years ago, made a tremendous splash in the evangelical world because he wrote a book called Love Wins, and he articulated the idea that hell is not literal, and that eventually all people, everyone, will be saved. And if that is the case, what are we doing here? What are we even bothering for? All people will be saved. Let's go home and party. No, my friends. There is Jesus. You make a mockery of Jesus and His words and His warnings. You can only believe that if you're not serious about what Jesus actually said. And I say, no. Friends, Christians have always believed that hell is a place of real physical existence. But there is another option. You don't have to go to hell. Heaven is also a place of real physical existence. I remember a quote when I was researching for this message. I remembered a quote. I read my kids last year. I read them the book Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. And I remembered a quote from Huckleberry Finn, and I looked it up, and here's what he said. Then Miss Watson told me all about the bad place, and I said I wished I was there. She got mad then, but I didn't mean no harm. All I wanted was to go somewhere. I wanted a change. I wasn't particular. But she said it was wicked to say that, and she wouldn't say that for the whole world. She was going to live so as to go to the good place. Well, I couldn't see no advantage in going where she was going. He didn't like Miss Watson very much. So I made up my mind I wasn't going to try for it, to go to heaven. Well, since she had got a start, she went on and told me all about the good place, heaven. She said all a body would have to do there is sit around all day long with a harp and sing forever and ever. So I didn't think much of it. But I never said so. I asked her if she reckoned Tom Sawyer was going to go there, and she said not by a considerable sight. I was glad about that because I wanted him and me to be together. Now, the reason I point that out is this. Because the reason Huckleberry, the incorrigible, adventurous boy, didn't want to go to heaven is because he believed something that the Bible never said about heaven. Miss Watson told him all wrong. She painted a picture of heaven that made an adventurous, excited, happy boy not want to go there. And that's not good. That's not at all what the Bible talks about in heaven at all. Heaven is not just a never-ending church service. It is not just sitting on a cloud with a harp. We usually think of heaven as a place without problems, no conflict, no relationship issues, no rest unless you want to, no worry, grief, no tears, no temptation. And all that is true, but heaven is not just defined by what's not there, by not just what isn't there. What if you knew, what if Huckleberry Finn had known that heaven was interesting people, exciting exploration, meaningful, enjoyable work? What if it was incredible spiritual experience? What if it was unending joy and happiness? What if it was the opportunity to explore and do and build? What if it was something, a never-ending adventure into God and all He has prepared? What if He had known that the earth was love with, heaven was love with no limit, a remodeled earth, redone, a new sky, a new earth, all recreated in complete perfection as God intended at the beginning? What if God created a planet and then said, I'm going to give you the ability to go and explore, have fun for all of eternity? Do work that's meaningful with no conflict. How many of you actually like to work when it's enjoyable, when you're doing something you enjoy and you're doing it with people you enjoy with? I love it. I love what I do. I love work. I enjoy working hard in the outside or working hard. I enjoy doing things with my job. I really, really, truly enjoy it. And when I'm working with somebody I enjoy being with, all the better. What if heaven is not just sitting down and playing with a harp? What if it's meaningful, enjoyable work that perfectly fits your gifts and your abilities? And when you want a vacation, you can take it and go explore for a few years and then come back and more enjoyable, meaningful work. What if it's that? And by the way, it is. It is. In fact, I want to read to you the other option, all right? On your handout, now I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The word heaven there is not talking about the city, the dwelling place of God. It's talking about the sky, a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and first earth had passed away. And I'll push pause and say, in some places, the way the language is used indicates that God will burn up what is there, but will leave the planet, that He will remodel it. In what we know of this earth, all that is bad and evil and broken, the slums and the brokenness and all those things burned up, and God says, start over, build a new one. Build a new one in a perfect society. Go ahead, go explore for what's needed. Go explore for some oil, Eric. I don't know if they have oil there or not. I have no idea, but we'll find out, won't we? Go explore, go do something, go build something, go. I don't know if they'll have plumbing problems. And Mike, you're going to be out of work because they're not going to have plumbing. You're going to have to find something new to do. They're not going to have leaky drains in heaven. I don't know what all it'll be, but I promise you, God's got something amazing in the new heavens and new earth. Also, He says, there was no more sea. Now, you say, well, wait a minute, I love the ocean. No, He didn't say there was no more water. He said there was no more sea. You see, in the old world, in the ancient world, now we've kind of conquered the sea today in some ways, but the ancient world, the sea was a place of scariness and death, where if you went and tried to sail across it, you didn't come back. Right? It was a place of death and storms, and people where widows would walk up on the roof of their houses watching for their husband's sail to come home, and it never did. That was the sea. And God says, I'm going to shrink that down. He didn't say there wouldn't be great lakes. He didn't say there wouldn't be large bodies of water. But the sea that covers a little over 2/3 of the earth now, oh no, that's gone. And the earth will be more and more millions of square miles to enjoy and explore. A glorified, perfect earth. He said, then I, John, saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, no sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. How many people have hurt this week? Anybody hurt? Yeah. I heard a comedian say the other day, he said, Brian Regan, he said, the older you get, you just get used to pain being permanent. He said, you just don't bounce back like you used to. You say, oh, I guess I'll just get used to that forever. But you know what? As a Christian, oh no, we're not used to it forever. We're used to it for just a little while, and then it goes away. No more pain. No more pain. That sounds good. And then he talks about the city of God. By the way, the capital city of the New Jerusalem. It's the capital city of the remodeled heavens and the remodeled earth. It says, the city was laid out as a square. Its length is as great as its breadth. And he measured the city with the reed, 12,000 furlongs. Its length, breadth, and height are equal. Now, 12,000 furlongs, if you go back and study the ancient system of measurements, if you're taking notes, heaven is a square. Is a glorified, I gave you the wrong blank, is a glorified perfect earth with a capital city of the New Jerusalem, 1,500 miles square. 1,500 miles square. That means 1,500 miles this way, and 1,500 miles this way, and 1,500 miles this way. Now, if you put one side of the New Jerusalem on the East Coast, how far are we from the East Coast? In round numbers, we're about 1,500 miles from the East Coast. In round numbers, right? That means the other edge of the New Jerusalem would be about the middle of the United States, would be about Oklahoma City. 1,500 miles wide, 1,500 miles long, and 1,500 miles high. That is 2.2 million square miles of city. 2.2 million square miles of city. If you added up the 100 largest cities in the world, it wouldn't even be in the ballpark of 2 million square miles. 2.2 million square miles to enjoy and explore. I like cities. Anybody else like cities besides me? How many of you are city people? You like cities? You like finding stuff in cities, and you're like, oh, I never saw that restaurant before. Oh, check this out. From time to time, I'll say to my wife, I don't think I've ever been down this street, and I'll just turn and go down that street. You know, you just go turn and like, oh, wonder what's down here. Oh, look at that house. That's weird. I've never seen this before. Oh, look, I've never seen that restaurant, because Oklahoma City's big old place. We're like, fifth in landmass or something like that. And there's a lot to explore here. I've lived here 13 years, and I've still got places. I still turn down streets. I've never been on this street before. I wonder what's down here. 2.2 million square miles, people. Not only that, but think about a city 1,500 miles high. Do you know how high that is? You say, well, that's outside the atmosphere. Oh, no. Remember, new heavens? Right? New heavens and new earth. The atmosphere is redone. By the way, if it is above the atmosphere, do you know why the Hubble Space Telescope is up that high? The Hubble Space Telescope, you've seen the pictures, the amazing pictures that NASA puts out. The Hubble Space Telescope takes those pictures. And the reason they have it up orbiting 350 miles high is because it gets them above the dust and the atmosphere of the earth. And they get a lot clearer, better pictures. It gets them above that. 1,500-mile high city, I want a reservation at the restaurant at the top of the 1,500-mile city. Okay, that's what I want. I want a restaurant. I want the view. Can you imagine the views out of that restaurant? Whoo! I'm gonna take Liz up there. It's gonna be good times, y'all. Which leaves, by the way, over 190 million square miles on the earth, assuming the earth is the same size. You say, well, I don't want all city. How many of you are country people? If you could, you'd live in the country. All right, that's cool. No problem. I love y'all too, all right? My wife is a country person. I'm city. I like cities. And I'm good with the country, but I love cities too. And I tell Lizzie, listen, heaven's going to be amazing, but only 2.2 million square miles of city. That means there's 190 plus million square miles of country. You get to go see it. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to hold your hand and let's go explore, all right? Let's do this because God, can you imagine what He has packed into, what He has planned for that world? I wish right now, I wish I could I took it all out because I didn't have time, but I wish I could go through and show you a slideshow of some of the amazing things on this planet. Amazing, incredible, beautiful, astounding things of nature, waterfalls and rainbows and groves of trees and fields of flowers and incredible mountains. Oh man, I'm going to go to all of it. I'm going to go to all of it someday. Sounds pretty good to me. Let's keep going, all right? I got to keep going. Well, no, I have two more things I've got to share before I go on. Here we go. In C.S. Lewis's book, The Last Battle, it's the last one of the Chronicles of Narnia series. C.S. Lewis wrote of a huge battle at the end of the ages, and then Aslan the king comes to establish the final kingdom. And when after the huge battle, several of the characters find themselves together in a place, a new and amazing land that is somehow vaguely familiar, but yet new at the same time. And they're trying to figure out where they are when Jewel the unicorn, in the story, The Last Battle, Jewel the unicorn suddenly shakes his mane and says this. He says, I have come home at last. This is my real country. I belong here. This is the land I've been looking for all of my life, although I never knew it until now. The reason I loved the old Narnia, he said, is that it sometimes looked a little bit like this. Come further up, further in. And then C.S. Lewis wrote this as a conclusion to the series. He wrote this, and then the things that begin to happen next were so great and so beautiful that I cannot write them. For us, this is the end of all the stories, but for them, it was only the beginning of the real story. All of their life in this world, the adventures in Narnia, had only been the cover page and the title. And now they were beginning chapter 1 of the great story, which no one on earth has read, which goes on forever, and in which each chapter is better than the one before. I stood by the graveside of my grandfather a couple of years ago, and they asked if I would read something. My grandfather was an English teacher for years. He loved English literature. And I chose that passage, that selection from C.S. Lewis, because I don't know of anything in the world that captures my hope and imagination and lifts my imagination better than that right there. For us, it may be the end of the first story, but all of our life on earth is the cover and the title page, and now the real story starts. Heaven is not an end, my friend. Death is not an end. It is a beginning. It is a beginning of the real story, the one you really want to read. That's my next point. Death is not is a beginning, not an end. All Christians know this to be true. Jesus answered him and said, I tell you the truth, today you will be with me in paradise. You see, death was just the door for that man. He had wasted his life. He was one of the thieves on the cross that Jesus was talking to. Wasted his life, deserved to die. And hanging there, he says, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said, truly, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. For that man, death was just a door into paradise, a door into what is next for all of those who've repented of sin, who believe in Jesus, and who follow after him. Good news, my friends. you will live forever somewhere. You will live forever somewhere. And you, 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 and you. You will live forever somewhere. Dr. W.A. Criswell, pastor of a church in Dallas, Texas, said one time he was sitting next to a well-known theologian, and he started a conversation on an airplane as they flew. And the man told Dr. Criswell a story. He said, I recently lost my little boy to meningitis. He said, I sat beside him as his little body fought the disease, but the doctor said, it's too far gone and we can't save your son. He's going to die. And so this seminary professor sat beside his son and watched and waited as his strength began to fail. His vision and his brain began to be clouded by the disease as it began to continue to attack him. And he said to his dad, Daddy, it's getting dark, isn't it? And his daddy said, yes, son, it's getting dark. His son said, Daddy, I guess it's time for me to go to sleep now, isn't it? And he said, yeah, son, it's time for you to go to sleep. This theologian said, my son had a way of fixing his pillow a certain way, and he'd put his hands under his face when he went to sleep. And he said, the little fellow fixed his pillow, put his hands under his head, said, good night, Dad. I'll see you in the morning. He closed his eyes. He slipped out of this world and into the next one. Dr. Criswell said that theologian turned his head with tears in his eyes and looked out the window of the plane for a long time and didn't say anything. And he said finally he turned back around with tears running down his cheeks and said, Dr. Criswell, I can't wait till morning. I can't wait for the morning. And I know some of you have lost people. Some of you have lost loved ones, people that you cared about. I hope they were believers in Jesus. Some of them were, and I'm grateful for that. And I will tell you that every one that you've sent on ahead is one more reason to go to heaven. It's one more reason to say, I can't wait for the morning. One of these days, the darkness ends and the sun rises, and it rises on a new heavens and a new earth, paradise for you and me and all those who believe in Jesus. And I say, praise God, that's a good day. I can't wait. You see, I used to not be happy about heaven, but I am now. I can't wait. I can't wait. It sounds good to me. If Jesus wants to come back right now, that works with me, y'all. Let's go. All right. Henry Morrison, great missionary who served the Lord in Africa for over 40 years. In those days, missionaries didn't often come home, and he had been gone from home for a long, long time. On the way back to the United States, up in years now, he was on his way back to the U.S. And he began to wonder as they sailed on the long journey across the ocean, he began to wonder, will anybody remember us? Will anybody know who we are? Will anybody meet us to get us off the boat and help us and be there and welcome us home? Well, unknown to Henry Morrison and his wife, President Teddy Roosevelt was also on that ship. As Roosevelt, he'd been gone to Africa for a hunting trip. When H.C. Morrison and his wife sailed back into port, they looked out to see if anyone had come to welcome them back home, and thousands of people were there to meet the ship. Bands were playing, signs and banners and billboards saying, "Welcome home, welcome home." They were so excited that they came down They went back to their room to get their luggage, came back to the deck of the ship to get off, and then realized that all the parade of people and signs had already gone. And there was nobody there to welcome them home. All those years serving God, preaching the good news in the darkest part of Africa. And Henry Morrison went to his hotel that night with kind of a heavy heart. And he told his wife, as he sat there on the side of the bed, honey, it just feels bad. 40 years we poured our life into serving God. 40 years we gave everything we have, and then we come back to America and not one person came to welcome us home. Henry's wife came and sat down next to him and put her arm around him and said, Henry, you just got to remember, you're not home yet. You haven't reached your home yet, Henry. One of these days, the welcome home banner is going to hang over the door, and the crowds will gather, and they will cheer, and the bands will play, and the gates will swing open, and God will say, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Lord. Enjoy all that God has prepared for you who love Him and followed after Jesus and treasured Jesus Christ above all other things. Welcome home, good and faithful servant. And I say, Lord, make it so. Make it so. If you're not ready for that day, my friend, if you're not ready for that day, here's what I want to tell you. You can be. You can be. You can get ready. You see, Jesus has made a way. Some of you may live your life thinking that it's all about what you do, and you got to do a bunch of right stuff. You got to go out of here and you got to do this and do this and do this and not do this and not do this and not do this, and that's how you get ready for heaven. And I will tell you that that isn't how you get ready for heaven, because it's not about how good you are or how bad you aren't that gets you into heaven. What gets you into heaven is the shed blood of Jesus Christ and nothing else. Your faith in what He has done, not what you can do, is the basis on which we get into heaven. And when I stand before God, my plea will not be, I served the Lord for all these years as a pastor in Oklahoma City. I was a good man. I did this and I did that. That's not my plea. My plea is, I'm a sinner, but He's a great Savior. That's my plea, and it can be yours as well. Will you turn from your sin? Will you turn away from Jesus, turn away from sin and away from Satan, and turn to Jesus? He's your only hope to get into heaven, and He's also all you need to get in. Would you bow your heads with me for prayer?